Blackstone, who wrote a little later on but expressed the knowledge, legal knowledge of the century, wrote, "By marriage, the husband and wife are one person in law. That is, the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during marriage." He also liked to wax lyrical about the experience of marriage. At one point he wrote, "Woman is like a tiny rivulet that flows into a mighty river and loses her identity." Blackstone was talking about feme's covert status. Feme covert meant woman covered. She was covered by her father when she was young and by her husband when she was older. And that meant that she was a dependent always. She couldn't sue or be sued. She couldn't keep the wages that she earned. She couldn't will anything she had to anyone, including her jewelry or her clothes. And, quite strikingly, her body belonged to her husband. When slaves ran away, the notice that was put up said, "Run away." When a woman ran away from her husband, the sign said, "She has abducted her body from me." Okay, yeah. You think things are bad now. In case the law was not enough, which meant absolute economic dependency your entire life, custom tended to reinforce all of these ideas. The only path to adulthood, for a woman was marriage and motherhood. For men, at a certain age they could vote, at a certain age they could inherit property, they could become elders in the church, they could hold offices. Not a woman. The only measure of adulthood for her was marriage and motherhood. This tended to lead most women to get married. The poor women who didn't get married, who were called in New England in the 17th century thornbacks, suffered a terrible fate. They had to go live as dependents, double dependents, in their brother-in-law or their brother's home. And there they were given the job that all women hated the most. Have any of you ever tried spinning? If you go to Plymouth Plantation or someplace, give it a try. I tell my students it is the single most boring activity, equaled only by watching bass fishing on ESPN. And everybody agreed that it was the worst activity. We have letters from women to their sisters and their friends saying, "I'm pregnant, oh God, I hope it's a girl so that by the time she's 8, she can do the spinning." So if you were not married and you were a dependent, guess what you got to do? And what were these women called? Spinsters, right. Better to have your own household than to be a dependent in someone else's household. Now that's the ideology. Women were to be subservient, helpful, dependent, productive, and reproductive, because it was critically important that women produced the labor force. And they did. On a farm, it was not uncommon, right up through the Revolution, for a woman to be pregnant 14 or 15 times in her lifetime. Now, they didn't all have 14 children because there were miscarriages and infant mortality was pretty high, but it was likely that a woman would continue to become pregnant until menopause. We have letters between daughters and mothers where they would talk about something called courtesy nursing. And that meant that if your daughter was visiting you and she had a baby and you had a baby, if she wanted to go see some friends, you nursed her baby for you. Freud would have a lot to say about this, but it was very common in the 17th and 18th century. This is different. The ideology is different from the roles women played. The roles women played are really interesting because not only were they responsible for reproduction, they were responsible for production. Men were the unskilled laborers. Women were the skilled laborers. Men did the grunt work in the field, but women processed raw materials into usable items. Everybody acknowledged that. There was not a farmer in the world who didn't want to have a wife, because she knew what was called the mysteries of housewifery. Any medieval scholars out there? Okay, who had mysteries? Craftsmen. The mysteries of goldsmithing, the mysteries of blacksmithing, the mystery of barrel making. These were the secrets of the profession. And that meant that you were an artisan, right? They talked about the mysteries of housewifery, meaning they knew that women had production skills that men did not have. And that was the primary activity, besides bearing children, that women had. Their houses were filthy. I mean, Mr. Clean would not have visited. They had dust bunnies the size of me. They didn't bother with washing and cleaning. My students think housewife. They decorate the table. They make the napkins match the placemat. They put flowers on the table. That's not what housewifery was. Housewifery was turning flax into cloth, slaughtering pigs and chickens, and preserving and cooking the meat, taking the apples from the orchard and making cider, making butter, all of the things that families needed. As my son once said to me, I would have just ordered in pizza. Not a historian, my son. So women were engaged in production, and that was their primary activity.